This is Jeremy Wentworth-Stanley. I'm the fellow who has a hyphen in my name. The hyphen is silent, but I am anything but that. Living Economics is brought to you by Respectonomics. Living Economics is a weekly rollout of what's going on in the economy. And our principal idea behind Living Economics is not only to describe what's going on in the economy, and to some extent to look at how do we participate in that, but also how do we protect ourselves. One might make a sort of logical point that it's a railway track, that my participation in the economy is also my protection. Put it another way, my protection is my participation. So when we look at the economy today in July of 2026, I think most of us would agree that individuals, political leaders, corporate leaders, and the like across the board are what you might call circling the drain and looking to see which way is the water going and when's it going to run out. There is not a sense of great confidence. We live in a world where employment is becoming increasingly fractured. We're looking at a world where debt has become the premium gasoline for the engine, knowing full well that that gasoline is also corrosive. And if we are going to be corroding the inner workings, and think about this for a moment, if gasoline is going into the engine through the filtrations and through the carburetors and the forced, what do they call it now? The forced, not ignition, trying to think of the word. I can't think of it fast enough. But anyway, the fact that fuel injection, that's what I'm trying to say. So you got fuel injection, carburation, and all other kinds of ways in which this gasoline is being brought into the system. It is corrosive. It is debt. Yes, it makes the engine run. But have you ever thought of what happens if you overrun an engine and at the same time the materials that you're using are corroding it? You may remember from many, many years ago, they used to add lead to the gasoline because that was thought to be the way to keep the engines running longer. Of course, then we found out that lead wasn't good for us. So in other words, what isn't good for us is the debt. The debt is being brought into the engine is firing, it is over-revving. And you can define over-revving because you can look at inflation and realize those are the prices of our lives that are over-revving. So, as we stand here circling the drains and looking to see which way we should go, and we talk about the indebtedness, we can talk about the margin debt in the stock market. Margin debt is at a record level. We can talk about the incredible incidence of gambling that is taking place in many, many different corridors. And you know it from the amount of advertising you see on TV channels. So you've got gambling, excessive debt by the corporations, excessive debt by governments, and excessive debt in the markets. Add these all up, and you would say to yourself, this engine will not be able to stand the test. The engine is the economy. And if the economy is coming into this kind of problem, then what am I going to do about it? And the first thing you do is to say to yourself, well, if I can't rely on the engine, what can I rely on? And the answer is to rely on yourself. That self-reliance is going to become increasingly important. If we agreed that the engine isn't working, the first thing we would say is, well, I'll have to go on my own. I'll have to walk. I'll have to bicycle. I'll have to crawl. But however I'm going to get to wherever I need to get to, the responsibility is going to be increasingly mine. And the first thing we need to do in this rollout of the economy is to recognize we are effectively on our own. And if we do not believe we're on our own, we will be made to realize we're on our own. Because all of the support mechanisms that you hear about, whether it's a social security or a welfare, whatever words are politely or impolitely used, regardless, the ultimate truth is going to be oneself. So it is oneself that is going to need to be the protection against this wobbly economic position. The economy today, we've talked a bit about the debt, we've talked about the reliance that people have on government, aside from being reliant on themselves. We've talked about the gambling issues and the debt issues combined with that. We know all of these things. They're right in front of us. And it's that old biblical expression you might remember when King Nebuchadnezzar was having his whopping great dinner party, banquet, and this thing was written on the wall. And it said, Mene, mene, tekel upharsin, which meant, be careful, your days are numbered. And the joke that made the rounds many thousands of years later is they see the writing on the wall and discuss the formation of the letters. In other words, we are getting these warnings coming to us from every corridor. We understand the lack of predictability. We understand the new revolution that's taking place technologically that we truly do not understand. And with all of that in mind, we therefore have to go back to what you might call the basic standard of oneself, and coming back to oneself to recognize the sense of that independence. It's an independence that is, in one sense, reliant on oneself, which was really how we were all raised, to be able to rely on oneself. And if you're going to rely on yourself, you want to think about the complete image of the human being, the complete entity of the human being, that each entity of humanity needs to be massaged, it needs to be fed, it needs to be covered. You put on your clothes. Well, the body needs clothing, the mind needs clothing, and the soul needs clothing. There's not one part of the experience that we have with body, mind, and soul that doesn't affect each and every one of them. If we're going to feed the body, we need to feed the mind, we need to feed the soul. These are independent, individual, unilateral responsibilities, which, when we get into them, enable us to provide a far greater deal of dignity and respect for our fellow human being. But that fellow human being is, in fact, starting with yourself. It is you that is being respected. It is you that is being dignified. It is you that is being given the true wealth, because true wealth are those incredible qualities that cannot, in fact, be bought with money. They are, in fact, the definition of value when they can't be bought with money. With all of that in mind, I want to pretend for a moment you've all seen these movies where you get the jury and you get the judge and you get the prosecutor and the defense counsel, and they all give brilliant speeches. I want you to give a brilliant speech. I want you to stand up and address the jury of humanity. And what I want you to do is, you may not be an economic officiant. You may not have a legal degree. I do not. You may not have a lot of things. But I want you to imagine for one moment that you're going to stand up in front of this jury and you are going to declaim and proclaim your reasons for your confidence in the future. And start with, because the human race is able to reinvent itself, it's organic, and so on. But go through all of the metrics that you believe are important to the success and the prosperity of humanity. Whether it's in your own backyard, whether it's in your community, whether it's in your family, whether it's in your nation, whether it's global, whatever position you're taking on this growth and this prosperity of the future, you are making your claims to the jury. We say to you, the jury, that this is the combination of events that are going to lead us to this place of prosperity. I'm going to conclude with one question. If you were to make that speech to the jury, would the jury believe you?